I never thought I'd tell this story. Hell, I wish I could forget it. But some things, they just stick with you. Like the smell of blood on your hands, or the sound of bones cracking underfoot. I don't know why I'm still here, and the others, well, they're not. Maybe telling it will make some sense of it. Maybe it'll help me sleep again. It was late October, right around Halloween. You know, when the nights start getting real cold, and the wind sounds like it's whispering secrets through the trees. We were just 4 guys, all in our mid-20s, looking for a bit of fun. It was me, Chris, Dylan, and Matt. We'd all been friends since high school, and we thought we were invincible. We'd go on these stupid little adventures. This time, though, it wasn't like any of the other times. We decided to go hiking in the woods just outside of town. Chris had heard about some old trails that hadn't been used in years, ones that were supposed to be off the grid. Sounded like a good way to get away from the everyday shit and just, I don't know, be guys. So we packed our bags, grabbed some beers, and headed out. The first few hours were great. The sky was clear, and the air had that crisp, autumn bite to it. We were laughing, joking around, and even though the trail was rough, it felt good to be out there. But then, as the sun started to dip behind the trees, we realized something wasn't right. The trail seemed to just disappear. One minute we were following a beaten path, the next we were surrounded by nothing but trees. Chris tried to play it off, saying we just took a wrong turn, but there was no turn to take. It was like the trail had just been swallowed up by the forest. Dylan, always the practical one, pulled out his phone to check the GPS, but there was no signal. Of course, there wasn't. We argued for a bit about what to do next. Chris wanted to push on, said the trail had to pick up again somewhere. Matt was with him, but Dylan and I, we weren't so sure. We should have turned back right then, but we didn't. We were stubborn, or maybe just stupid. So we kept going, deeper into the woods. It didn't take long before we were completely lost. The trees seemed to close in around us, and the shadows grew longer, darker. The air felt heavier, too, like we were breathing in something thick and rotten. I swear, it was like the forest was alive, watching us, waiting for us to screw up. And we did. We walked for what felt like hours, but time seemed to stretch out, like we were stuck in some kind of twisted dream. Just when I was about to suggest we set up camp and wait for daylight, we saw it. The farmhouse. It was old, real old. The kind of place that looks like it's been abandoned for decades. The paint was peeling, the windows were broken, and the roof sagged in places. But it was shelter, and we were desperate. Chris, being the fearless idiot he was, decided we should check it out. Could be a place to crash for the night, he said. Better than freezing our asses off out here. I didn't like it. There was something about that place that made my skin crawl. But Chris and Matt were already heading for the door, and Dylan was right behind them. I didn't want to be left alone out there, so I followed. Inside, it was even worse. The air was thick with dust and mold, and the floorboards creaked with every step. There was furniture, old and rotting, like whoever had lived there just up and left one day, leaving everything behind. It was eerie as hell. But there was something else, too. A smell. It was faint, but it was there. Like meat left out too long in the sun. We split up to check the place out. Chris and Matt went upstairs, while Dylan and I stayed on the ground floor. We found a kitchen, with rusted appliances and dirty dishes still in the sink. There was a table, too, with a single chair tipped over beside it. It looked like there'd been a struggle, but there was no sign of anyone, or anything. Dylan was starting to get freaked out, and to be honest, so was I. We decided to regroup and get the hell out of there, but when we went to find Chris and Matt, they were gone. We called out for them, but there was no answer. Just silence. Thick, oppressive silence. Panic started to set in. We ran upstairs, checked every room, but there was no sign of them. It was like they'd just vanished. Dylan was losing it, said we should leave, get back to the woods and find our way out. I was about to agree when we heard it. A scream. Matt's scream. It came from somewhere deep in the house, below us, like it was coming from the walls themselves. Without thinking, we rushed down the stairs, searching for the source. The scream stopped suddenly, cutting off like it had been choked out. Then, nothing. Just that goddamn silence again. We found a door at the back of the kitchen, one we hadn't noticed before. It led down to a basement, dark and cold. Dylan didn't want to go down there, and neither did I, but we couldn't just leave them. So we grabbed the closest thing we could find, a rusty old pipe, and headed down. The stairs creaked under our weight, and the air grew colder with each step. At the bottom, we found ourselves in a small, damp room. The smell hit us full force then, like death and decay. There was a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling, flickering weakly, casting long shadows on the walls. And there, in the corner, we saw it. The source of that smell. It was Chris. Or what was left of him. His body was twisted in a way that no body should ever be. His limbs were bent at unnatural angles, and his face. God, his face. It was frozen in this horrible expression of terror, eyes wide open, staring at something none of us could see. His mouth was open too, like he was still screaming, even in death. And his skin, it was pale, almost gray, like all the blood had been drained out of him. But there wasn't a drop of blood anywhere around him. I froze. My legs felt like they were made of lead, my stomach turned, and I thought I might puke right there. Dylan, though, he lost it completely. He dropped the pipe, backed up against the wall, and started muttering to himself. He was saying we had to get out, we had to leave, that something wasn't right. But then, we heard it again. That scream. Only this time, it was different. It wasn't just Matt. It was Chris too. Their screams blended together, echoing through the basement, coming from all directions, like the walls were alive with their voices. Dylan covered his ears, tears streaming down his face. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. And then the light went out. Everything was pitch black. I couldn't see Dylan, couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. The only thing I could hear was those screams, getting louder and louder, until it felt like they were inside my head. I tried to move, to run, but it was like the darkness had a hold on me, pulling me down, suffocating me. Then, just as suddenly as it went out, the light flickered back on. The room was empty. Chris's body was gone. Dylan was gone. I was alone. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in place, before I forced myself to move. My legs were shaking, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I made my way back up the stairs, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside, made me jump. When I got back to the kitchen, the door to the basement slammed shut behind me. I didn't even turn around. I just ran. I ran through that old house, stumbling over broken furniture and debris, not caring where I was going, just needing to get out. I burst through the front door and into the night. The cold air hit me like a slap to the face, but I didn't stop. I kept running, through the trees, through the darkness, until my legs gave out and I collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. I don't know how long I laid there, staring up at the sky, trying to convince myself that it was over, that I was safe. But I wasn't safe. I could still hear them. Chris, Matt, Dylan. Their screams echoed in my ears, growing fainter but never completely gone. They were part of me now. Eventually, I managed to get up. My whole body ached, and I was freezing, but I forced myself to keep moving. I had to get out of those woods. I had to find help, tell someone what had happened. But no matter how far I walked, the trees never seemed to end. It was like I was walking in circles, like the forest itself was keeping me trapped. I don't know how long I wandered. Hours, maybe. Days. Time had lost all meaning. All I knew was that I was alone, and that my friends were gone. Taken by something in that house. Something I couldn't understand, something I didn't want to understand. Finally, just when I thought I'd die out there, I stumbled onto a road. A real, paved road. I collapsed on the asphalt, too exhausted to move. But I was found, eventually. A passing car stopped, and the driver called for help. The paramedics said I was dehydrated, hypothermic, on the brink of death. They took me to the hospital, and I tried to tell them what had happened, but no one believed me. The police went out to look for the farmhouse, but they never found it. They never found any trace of Chris, Matt, or Dylan either. They said it was the shock, that my mind had created this story to cope with the trauma of being lost in the woods. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know that I'm the only one left. I moved away after that. Couldn't stand to be in that town anymore, surrounded by people who looked at me like I was crazy, or worse, like I was responsible. I don't sleep much these days. When I do, I dream of that house, of those screams. And I know that someday, it'll come for me too. Whatever it was, it won't let me go. It's just waiting. Waiting for the right time. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I can still hear them. The whispers in the wind, the creak of floorboards in an empty room. They're with me, always, reminding me that I shouldn't be here, that I should have died with them. But I didn't. And I don't know why. So that's my story. Believe it, don't believe it, I don't care. I just needed to tell it. Maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. But at least it's out there now, and not festering inside my head. Just do me a favor, okay? If you ever find yourself in those woods, and you see an old farmhouse, turn back. Don't go in. No matter what you hear, no matter what you think you see. Just turn around, and run. Because once you step inside, there's no coming back. Not really. And if you hear someone screaming, don't follow the sound. It's not your friend. It's not anyone you know. It's the house. And it's waiting for you.